All right, cool. So let me share my screen. Are you okay recording it, Dallas?
Yeah.
Okay, I already said that. All right, great. So this is how I've, if it's okay with everybody, this is how I've shared my PowerPoints, not in the full presenter mode, because then I really can't see anybody else. It's just, I haven't figured out Zoom yet. So if people can't see the screen or they need something bigger or whatever, just speak up. You know, this is a very, like Nancy had said, and Nancy, this is very informal. We don't have a lot of time, so it's gonna be, you know, a lot of me and Carrie and or me and Corey and Carrie saying a few words. But I just want to, you know, the idea of conversations, of CE conversations, the idea is a little bit that this really isn't a training. This is kind of like a workshop. Like these ideas aren't, at least the ones I'm going to share, they're not fully formed or fleshed out necessarily. They're not the final word. I want to, what's happening is like we talk via Teams and, you know, we call each other, and there are some things we're all seeing a little bit, you know, and you know, and as CE evolves and as we innovate, as we try to push things forward, there are just some things that we, like today we'll talk about vocational themes and just some common misunderstandings, but it's you know, broader than that. I just want to make sure that's what I mean by or conversation or a dialogue, you know, that we're working through this stuff. So you'll see at the end, we've asked if you could email us with your thoughts, you know, with your input and type in whatever you want, you know, during in the chat. We may not have tons of time for discussion because of the number of people and time, but we'd love to hear from you if stuff's making sense, if it's not, your thoughts. But I just want to make sure that that's what this is. It's kind of us just working through stuff, you know. So in that sense, it's not really a training, more of just our perspective right now. So we got myself, Corey, and Carrie. And so fortunate, you know, Griffin-Hammis Associates to have Carrie join us. And I was actually telling people I thought it was 50-50 that you'd make it today, Carrie. I wasn't quite sure. I told Kathy that earlier today. So maybe the odds were better than I had anticipated. But so we just wanted to talk a bit about vocational themes, and actually we're gonna put Carrie on the spot here first to tell us, because it's his big brain. You know, he's the genius really where the themes came from. And from my perspective, I think it's one of the really great innovations in customized employment, and we'll talk about why. So is that okay if you start there, just on a bit on the origins, like what you were thinking, that kind of stuff?
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah. There are numerous origin stories, it turns out, for discovery and for vocational themes. But I think, like all of us, I struggled. You know, we started out back in the old days, in the late 1980s, applying person-centered planning, or what was known then through Beth Mound as personal futures planning, applying that to supported employment and helping people get jobs. And what we saw over and over again was that we came up with these beautiful life maps and everything and all these dreams, but people still had lousy jobs if they had a job, you know. And I remember watching an interview with Bill Gates, and Bill Gates talked a lot about, you know, sort of his origin stories and where ideas came from, and you know, and somebody asked him about, well, you know, what'd you dream about as a kid? And he says, I dreamed about having ideas. He says, dreams have zero market value, which really struck me as both, you know, what a terrible thing to say, and wow, what a brilliant thing to say. And that took me down this road to thinking about, you know, where does work come from, and why are we so adaptable as human beings? I mean, many of us did not certainly study rehabilitation, but we got into it and we loved it, and it turned out to be our life's work. But we would have been just as happy pursuing whatever it was that we studied in college, right? I mean, something like 80%.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you everybody mute, please? Sorry.
Yeah, something like 80% of college graduates don't work in the field that they studied. And so you start to wonder about, well, how good could you be at at predicting the future for people. And it just led to a number of years of kicking this around in my head. And again, I'm going a little bit deeper than I meant to here. But what happened was that we were really getting shallow in job development, I thought, and we were being, as in the 90s, the early 90s, when supported employment plateaued, and we kind of realized that the people that we were working with now were a lot more difficult than the people that we were working with, in the early 1980s and throughout that decade, and that we needed stronger tools, and those tools came from people like Michael Callahan and Dave Mank and Wayman and other people who evolved over time into doing things differently, and that certainly was us as well. It kind of boiled down to this idea that geez, we'd go into job development with one idea, and we weren't really doing job development. We were doing job finding. We'd go out and look for help wanted signs, or we'd try to, convince somebody to hire somebody. And there's a real simple exercise. All of us have met that person, whose sister says, well, boy, he's really good with my puppy. Well, what do you mean he's really good with his puppy? Well, he feeds the puppy, and he combs the puppy, and he takes the puppy out, and he cleans up after the puppy. And it's like, wow, fantastic. This is great. We know where there are puppy jobs. So as a group, if you can, just think for a minute about the jobs that you might develop for somebody who likes puppies. It usually is almost always the stereotypical stuff of feeding, grooming, if you've got some skills where you can stick around long enough with that employer to get the skills, walking dogs, picking up after the dogs, watering the dogs, and then you're done. You're basically out of ideas. You got 5 job ideas, and maybe that's one job altogether. But that doesn't leave you anything robust to go after. And, so to broaden that, we thought in terms of, well, what umbrella, what industry might that puppy fit under, that puppy care, what might that fit under? Because I've never met anybody who didn't like puppies. So really, I haven't discovered anything new about this human being. And we all know that human beings are complex. We all know that human beings are multifaceted. I don't care what your alleged IQ is. People are puzzling. And there has to be something more puzzling about a job than looking at somebody and going, yeah, they like puppies. Again, it's like, it's like in the early days of discovery, when I'd say uncover 3 themes, people would come back with, music, ice cream. Well, everybody likes music, puppies, and ice cream. That you didn't do anything to distinguish this person from everybody else on earth. So you haven't got enough. So if we look at puppies and we broaden that and we go, well, a puppy is an animal. People work with animals. Animals isn't a job description. We're trying to get away from thinking in job descriptions. So we're thinking about animals now, and we're thinking about even in the smallest community. My God, how many jobs are there working with animals? And there's the typical ones. You're going to think about, the farmer and cows, and you're going to think about the veterinarian, and maybe you're going to think about the restaurant owner because they work with dead animals, right? And, and taxidermists and hunting guides, and you might get out a little bit on the fringe somewhere, but my guess is that you're not investigating goat cheese. You're not investigating, I said this once in Idaho, I think I'm blanking on your name. Why am I blanking on your name, Idaho? Speak up, Tracy, God, it's been too long, Tracy.
I know what's coming.
We were, I forget, I think we were in Moscow, Idaho. And I said something about, somewhere near here, there's an old, deadhead sitting in a cave making knitting needles out of dead goat ribs. And sure enough, somebody comes up at break and finds custom made, animal bone, knitting needles for sale in Idaho. What we tried to do was to push you into uncharted territory, to go out on the fringes, to look at the weirdest possible jobs, and really for many reasons. One thing is that people who are doing things that are different than everybody else is doing with animals, first of all, they're probably risk takers, and hiring somebody with a disability, even though we're not anywhere near that point yet, hiring people with disabilities is still seen as a risk, right? In most business. But the other thing that it does is that it broadens your brain. You start to learn things about your community that you didn't know. And you start to find businesses everywhere. I always talk about the road that we live on. There's somewhere near, 24 families on our road, and there's over a dozen small businesses, but there's no sign on our road that says Paul's Cabinet Shop. But Paul's right across the street from us. Paul doesn't have a website. He doesn't have any employees, but he has contract labor sometimes. He's, if you know the show Yellowstone, Kevin Costner's show, that's filmed here. And some of the actors are building houses here. Well, Paul's building the bar for one of those houses, and the bar alone is $20,000. Had he taken the contract, he's semi-retired, so had he taken the contract, he would be making over $100,000 worth of cabinets for this house that this guy's building. You don't know that that's there unless you start to follow these clues around the themes. And so I don't know, I could talk about this for hours, obviously, but I hope you get some sense of, why did we make it so broad? Well, it's because you're not going to discover anything new unless you make it broad, and think big, think out there. Just a lot of jobs have come out that way. I know that in Alaska, with a project up there a long time ago, we were working with somebody who was an artist. I started looking at who was artistic and artistic in maybe different ways. And we took that and we combined that with also a culinary theme that this person had. And we ended up at a chocolate manufacturer that was actually in an abandoned gas station, who needed somebody to hand paint chocolates because they sold downtown for $2 a pop to the tourists, and that was a dozen years ago. But who'd have thought that you'd get an artist a job in a chocolate factory? But it fit perfectly, especially when you combine those themes. So the strength of all of this comes in that you've got three themes. Or evidence for three themes, and you put those together and you get a fairly strong vocational profile of where it is that you're going to look for jobs. So I'll shut up because that went on way too long.
Carrie, can you just talk a little bit more about your theory, how you got into this with the complex people that taught you who needed solutions, and they had to have three solutions to solve the problem? Can you just cover that a little bit more?
Yeah, actually, Ellen and I were talking about this last night, and it was always interesting to me that people would come up and say, well, this person can do a two-step task. Okay, well, he's hitting his head into the wall right now. What about that? And they'd go, oh, well, he's got really complex behaviors. We can't figure that out. But his vocational stuff isn't complex? How can you tell me that? You haven't figured out his behavior of putting his head into the wall, but you're telling me you've figured out his career already because you think he can do two steps in a vocational evaluation. I just saw it as, as we had to introduce complexity, because complexity makes things more bulletproof in a lot of ways. And the actual idea of three came from the Marine Corps. where the Marine Corps for years talked about when they trained officers in complex situations, often under pressure or under fire. One of the rules of the Marine Corps was that if you're going to solve a complex problem, you have to have 3 solutions, because we know that one of them is the easiest one for you to do, and it's probably the least likely to work. So we're going to throw one out so that we have at least 2 that are really solid and you have evidence for. And that's where that came from in my brain. Where I got that story about the Marines, I don't know, but I guess it comes from somewhere, or I dreamt it. But the idea of introducing complexity to something that's really complex, having a job is really stinking hard. So, we ought to put some time into it. So,
Excellent.
Awesome. So, and the other thing about complexity, what I love, complexity, always in complexity is contradiction. And I feel like contradiction was things that just weren't allowed, with people with disabilities, because the label became static and it was this. And one of the things I love, or many of the many things, is this idea that there can be many things that are even seem like they're opposing, but they're all equally true depending on what the environment, what's happening, the setting, who's around, what I mean, who's around, and so that we can honor people's fullness. We're not reducing people. We're trying to, and that's essentially, to me, what the themes are, is an expansion, of information, of who people are.
It's also not taking people's word for it. It's the idea of, okay, I've got this hint, let's go test it, let's go look at it. And I remember that Trisha Jones Parkin and I went into this young man who was on the autism spectrum. We went and did his home visit, and we had some ideas about him, but sitting down with his family had just great information. But one of the things that mom said was, he cannot be in an environment where there are sudden noises. That loud noises or sudden noises just shut him down, and he'll throw it, he'll just lose it or run out into the street. He can't take it. And so then we did the bedroom visit, and we walk in and there's a set of drums. And we said, well, there's your contradiction. It's like, and that's what I look for is, okay, whose drums are these? Well, those are his drums. So it's okay to have loud noise as long as he's in control of it, right? And so we tested some of those things, and again, most of us don't like loud noises when we're not controlling them, right?
Yeah.
So but you're right. The looking for the contradiction really helps us pull out the complexity in people's lives.
Cool. Yeah. And the other thing, I think it gets back to, I remember reading something of Herb Lovett, or watching maybe a video of Herb Lovett. And I mean, when he started in institutional settings, I think he said first year, he couldn't figure out what was going on. He's like, I have no idea what's going on. And he's like, obviously genius level guy. And I feel like that, with work a lot, it's like, just that feeling of being stuck. I don't know what the next step is. I don't know what's going on. With a lot of traditional approaches for a lot of people, and just feeling like these tools just aren't working. What are the tools? And so that was, to me, again, I think just what you're saying, to broaden, to get big themes, to go talk to people maybe you aren't going to talk to, I think helps you get unstuck a bit, meeting people.
Well, and you try to institute rules too. I mean, one of the hard things about being a consultant is that nobody follows your rules because you don't have power. But, one of the things that we used to talk about was, tell your staff that they can't do job finding. They can't do retail job development. And we used to say all the time in teaching discovery and taking people out in the community, we don't do retail unless there's manufacturing or production tied to that retail outlet. And you stay out of box stores. There's no reason for you to go to Target other than Target's easy, because they're open 24/7. They can't throw you out. They have to let everybody in. And you go in and you ask, you spend the day out on the strip west of town, and you get 5 job applications. That's not job development. So, go to small places, go to places that don't have a sign, go to places where you can talk to the owner and talk to them about their vocational themes without using that language.
Right. Awesome. Well, I gotta say, I mean, I'd probably speak for everybody here that it is just so wonderful to listen to you. I could spend the whole day. You could
Boy,
just
you've been
talk,
through
and
it.
I'd be happy just listen, soaking it up. So
You've been through a year of COVID. You don't know what.
nah, no. That retail thing. I used to tell people, Carrie. I'm like, people think I was a hard ass about where you can go. I'd be like, Carrie tells people they can't even go to retail places.
Right.
That's his basic, but he's the boss. He can do that. I'm going to be a little bit more flexible with you.
Yeah. Get rid of those bad behaviors right away.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I did want to point out just real quick, and again, I like to describe vocational themes as like more art probably than science. I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Mhm.
But if we think about like what makes up a vocational theme, and again, this came from Carrie's head, but these are the 6. If those of you that are in projects or have worked with us, you'll be familiar that when we're asking you to divine or to identify the emerging themes, and then later the confirmed themes. These are the general kind of components, I guess, or pieces. So it's the discovery activities that you do, personal attributes, the tasks, skills, either existing or emerging in terms of skills, interests, and then work conditions and work culture, environmental stuff. So we'll talk about how I think sometimes like people pick one of those and say that's the theme. And we'll, again, this is not meant to be the final word, just kind of observations. But
oh no, she's coming. I sent you a.
Oh, okay. But and feel free to jump in anytime, Carrie or Corey. So thank you. Awesome. And then, okay, so and just sum up, we'll go through this real quick. Just Carrie said all this. The idea is the theme is some reflection, it represents an understanding of the employment seeker. And what Carrie said is right on it. Sometimes the hardest thing to teach, I find, is because people maybe think you're being a little disrespectful when we say, people tell you that, but the old trust but verify kind of thing is like, you don't trust what people tell you. That's not meant in a disrespectful way. It's just that sometimes people don't have a lot of experiences and haven't had a lot of options, or maybe a lot of things have been chosen for them. And so I think that's, one thing I learned from Dave and you right away was the joke about we're going to help people start greeting card businesses and a shredding business, and they're going to sell to each other. It's like where do those business ideas come from? Typically the settings they've been in. So that's what it is. It's an understanding of the person. As you don't get it right away. It's as you go through the process and you identify emerging themes, and then later on, you identify the confirmed themes. And one of the things I love about our process, again, this is me tooting our own horn, is that during discovery, we interact with business. And I just think that makes a lot of sense to me, because before I decide on the path I want to go for work, I want to have a bit of understanding or of information about what that work may be, not the final word again, or not the total answer. So we use themes both during discovery and during job development. I just essentially, it is the guiding kind of North Star, the compass for the next step. So the idea again is that we often, we often narrow things. We have limited, we real quickly get to, well, we have 1 or 2 things to do, and then we just get stuck. So, and then definitely it's based on, it's not something we just make up. It's not something that we read in a report somewhere. But as a facilitator of customized employment and of discovery, the first step in it, that's our responsibility. It is that our job is to kind of be the broker, somehow to be a bit of an interpreter or just an organizer of the information, share what we find, make sure it makes sense. And then the last thing, and what I think to me, one of the most important tests of is it a theme or not, is that it's got to somehow connect you with another human being. I think that's often also what gets in the way, is that it's got to make sense to people. Other people, like Carrie said, you're going out and trying to find places where the theme makes sense, find other people who share similar themes, where the work makes sense. So cool. And again, jump in, guys. I'll go through this quick. I'm getting a little feedback. I don't know if folks, if you could mute, cool. So the other thing is that, and one of the reasons I love customized employment is that it's not just for people with disabilities. It's obviously it can be funded in VR, but my daughter's using it. I've used it. So the theme is universal. It's a universal tool technology, but it's especially useful, I think, for people who've had limited experience. Again, as a way to help us get ideas on how to get new information, right? I mean, if you think about what discovery means, to make known, to reveal, right? The idea is there has to be some new information, some new knowledge that's produced by it. And then this, before Corey, I'd like you to talk about the cutting corners thing, but I've stolen this from somebody, and I apologize to that person, but it was just brilliant. The idea that to make, that experiences are what people, they have life experiences and work experiences or whatever. And through those experiences, people have preferences, right? They know what they prefer and what they don't. And then those preferences are what allow people to make informed choices, right? So the idea, again, sometimes, do you want to, the janitorial gig, I think that happens way too often. I think that's not really, people didn't really choose that job necessarily. It's like, do you want to work or not is the choice they have, and so I just think part of the process, right? I know part of the process of discovery is to help people have some experiences so that they can get information to have preferences and then to make choices later. So Corey, you mind talking about the cutting corners? That's your bullet, sorry. Is that okay?
Well, we know that, I remember in graduate school, there was, I had this great advisor, and we had like 16 weeks. We talked about the difference between the word effective versus efficient. And I swear to God, in the English language, the word effective has died. It's all about efficient. And then we go do the 3 community-based work assessments. And one of the places I work, it's in the retail store. It's the drug and alcohol. It's the medication aisle. That's not even an employee of the grocery store. It's a subcontractor does that. So we're quickly cutting the corners to get there, right? It's curious that we want to get there, get paid as easily as possible. And there's a couple states I'm working with right now where you get a bonus if you develop the job faster, right? And I think that's more for job placement, but this kind of leads people to cutting corners. And we're asking, you to focus on being effective versus being efficient. And Customize was right. I think before COVID, we had supposedly 19% of the country with intellectual, after 30 years of this, only 19% of people with intellectual disabilities working after high school. So I think we really got to continue to work on being effective versus being efficient. And, as Carrie would say, with our process, this is the process that works. And if you cut it short, the process is broken, it won't work.
Yeah, and I've heard Carrie say, this is the shortcut. This is the shortcut. I think I've heard you say that a few times. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so to be, and again, this is us just thinking out loud about, because I know themes are, that is kind of where people struggle, because if they're new to this process, because it may be a new idea. And the other thing about vocational themes is that it's like the pivot point towards engaging the business world. Right. So some general, again, I don't know if I'd say rules or just things we've seen, is to be expansive, it can't be limiting, right? That's the other side of the coin. So no job descriptions or business ideas, right? If you're close to any of that, it's probably not a vocational theme. The other part about the theme, and I think part of number 2 and 3 is a good, just like during job development, you're starting to think with a marketing hat a little bit, because we're using the theme to introduce people to strangers or somebody, hopefully people that we get warmed up to. But you're going to be standing in front of that person with the person next to you and maybe facilitating that conversation. So, the theme is a broad, what I love about the theme is if you have a good one, it really prompts further conversations or prompt a question or a follow-up, right? And so if it's a theme, and we do this during the discovery process, there has to be supporting evidence, right? And it's got to be authentic, meaning, and what I try to talk about is you've got to be prepared with a story, right? With a detail. When you talk about why this person has a theme or what the theme is, the next step is, here's this really cool thing, that we did or that we learned, and it should make sense to the business owner, right? That's kind of 2 and 3 combined. You can't fake it. It's got to be authentic, and that's one of the things Dave taught me. Like one of the very first things he said to me was, you cannot fake believing in, or knowing the person, or understanding the person, or believing in the person. He said businesses or the community will see through it in a second. If you're trying to get them to figure the person out, or you don't really know. And then so that's kind of 2. It's got to be real evidence, and then it's got to. I think it's definitely got to. We're talking a lot. Everybody's talking about storytelling. but it's got to be the beginnings of a narrative, something that makes sense, something that has kind of a flow to it. And that's the thing that can connect, that people will identify with, right? That's part of the idea behind the themes too. So I think that sometimes I think that's, assembly, and I think that's one of the next ones. Like when you said assembly, that's in the title. I just think, like, my first question is, assemble what? Like what is that? What are you assembling? And how do people? I don't know that people probably connect over the thing being assembled. Like if you're building cars, right? And that's part of that job, but there's other tasks as well. I don't know, and that's just my limited experience. I don't know. And that would probably describe a version of a task, or an environmental condition, perhaps. So we would think maybe that's the story that's like, how does that story flow? And so that's the idea behind that, and the idea of useful fiction is that, these things, they don't, and I was telling Carrie, this stuff, it's not, we don't have a checklist, right? And we shouldn't. It's not a 2 + 2 = 4 kind of thing, right? New themes, we could bump into them every day. So I just, I think the idea, sometimes we get the questions of, what's the list of themes? Or, do I have the correct theme? People really want to, it's more about being correct than like having the information that makes sense. And then also, sometimes people ask us, I'll kind of reverse engineer a theme, and well, what's the common things that, I heard when Carrie and I were in a project, somebody kept talking to us about clusters of people with disabilities. Like, what are the clusters? The common cluster of people with disabilities. And it's like, that doesn't quite make sense to me. So the idea is that they are an interpretation, kind of I've written down, against this being workshop, a construct, like a representation, right? Kind of an amalgam. So they don't really exist on their own. They're a reflection. That's why I think, useful fiction, I've heard maybe Doug say, fiction are often lies that tell the truth, if that makes sense. That it doesn't really exist independently of the person. And different people may look at things a different way, but the evidence is solid, right? The evidence is definitely real. And then it points in a certain direction that puts the theme together. So that's what we mean about that. And again, these are just thoughts. They're more than half-baked, but they're just things that we're bumping into. We talked about the mistaking one component of a theme for the theme itself. I think that happens quite a bit. Whether it's cleaning or generous or kindness, or, it's just like, well, these are qualities of the person, attributes or tasks, but, we're looking for something. What are people kind about? Who are they around, right? What's happening? And then the other thing that we see a lot are these cliches. So I would just say that oftentimes these vocational themed cliches, and we've had conversations about maybe getting rid of organization and cleanliness because they happen so often, and they're often just reflecting what people, oftentimes they reflect what's happening in the day program or in the group home. And they tend to be stereotypes. So I think these are, again, the things we're struggling with and trying to figure out, is that there's just limited data, limited experiences. I can guarantee you, in about 75% of the discovery that I've done, this is not meant as a criticism, I do this too, right? People go to the library, and I just, when we start seeing stuff like that over and over again, or bowling, I know we've all been, understood that for years, but there's just these common things that keep happening. We're like, well, is that really about that person? Or is it about, what's available? So, I just think it's stuff that we're struggling with. And then the make sense criteria. And Carrie, was your line about would a stranger know what's happening in the photo? That kind of thought that it makes sense criteria. If you were to introduce the person, just imagine that in your head, you're standing next to a stranger. What would you say to them? And what you're saying in terms of describing the theme, is that going to be something that somebody who's not in our world, just introducing another human being to another human being, is that going to make sense to them? Cool. And I'll just go through these real quick. Sorry to talk at everybody, but the other thing that I love about this process is that it's emergent, right? The idea that this is complicated, and complicated kind of things in complicated situations, like you can't know the answer until you start engaging with what's happening, or you can't know the next step until you start the first step. And then when you engage that first step, it alters some variables, right? So things get even more complicated maybe. What I love about the process, it doesn't tell you what's going to happen next, but you kind of generally know the flow and the steps, sort of roughly. But that kind of creative dance is involved. And so I think, like Carrie said, don't trust what people tell you, and from a kind perspective. I think sometimes that's hard to that kind of uncertainty, right, and complexity, to say to people, I'm not exactly sure what you're going to be doing, when you do your informational interviews or you're doing that discovery activity, but we'll know when we get there, or we'll know as we approach that. I think sometimes that people aren't okay with that, and there's like a path that they've seen, or maybe somebody that they worked with somebody that reminds them of the person they're working with, and it kind of influences what they're doing, but there's not really any evidence there. And then the last two things on this slide are, I just think we're seeing a lot and this is a worry of all of ours, as customized employment becomes a fundable service, is that just doing it, or I've heard like getting through, we got to get through discovery, like, that becomes more important than the actual work, right? And the point, in a way, the reason we want the person who does discovery to then do the job development and then do the consultative supports is because the natural check on doing good discovery is you're going to be the person that does the job development, right? So discovery is all about work. Discovery is about getting all the information you need to feel confident and prepared to support the person through customized job development. So I just think that often people just want to get a theme, right? They just want to, and sometimes I get, if you don't know what the theme is, it's probably a signal that we need to do a little more, talk to other people, do some more discovery activities. But just that's something that we've seen too. And I get, there's funding and other pressures, but the quality of the work is the most important thing, because the quality of work will lead to a successful outcome. The other thing that often, the bias towards action just means, we can plan, we can talk, but we just got to get, the best thing to do is just do some stuff, do a bunch of stuff, right? I mean, it's got to make sense for the person. It's not the getting through it energy, but the idea is the more stuff you do, you're going to get a lot more ideas. You have more ideas, there's a greater likelihood you're going to have some good ideas. And this is the last slide that I'll talk on. Is that, the other thing too, is that what I love about all this too, is that, we don't get stuck in form. I don't think, this is the current iteration of what we think of what we're finding is best practice or evidence-based practice, but it's going to change. We're going to hopefully get better at it, right? It's going to become more effective, more efficient. And we're going to continue to innovate. So, what we call it right now, customized employment discovery, customized job development, it's not really the point. The point is what they represent, right? The point are the tools, the tactics, the strategies, right? So it's, one of our fears with customized employment is that as it expands, it kind of does what, and this is no knock on support employment, but it kind of becomes what support employment became, which was it's pretty much anything. There's no real definition. Support at the point of need, ongoing supports, but enclaves. I've seen shelter work. I've seen all kinds of stuff be justified as supported employment, or described as that. And so we just want to make sure that the focus is on the core, on the information that we're getting using these tools. Because if the themes are bad, right? If the discovery's bad, job development's going to be bad. And lastly, I answered that question already. Discovery is for work, right? It's like Carrie said. I like to describe sometimes as the functional component of person-centered planning, but it's not really. It's the action part to target quickly towards work. We're doing stuff. It's not something to turn into a program, or it's a first step to get the foundation, the platform for launching towards work. So cool. So sorry about that. Just thoughts again. That's kind of as we're going through this. So cool. Anything you want to add, Carrie or Corey, to that?
No.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just great. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and I would say again, if you're doing discovery right, you're making assumptions along the way that your evidence will not support. I can think of a young lady that we worked with who everything presented that she had a culinary theme of some kind, and working on some of her other themes. She definitely had sort of a construction or a mechanical theme. We hadn't worked far enough on that, but again, sort of going to assembly is like way too specific, but you'd have to ask that question, what assembly of what? But she definitely had, this interest in taking things apart and putting them back together, or as far as we knew. But the thing that really, you know, and a lot of times you have a dominant theme, one that just sort of jumps out at you. And of course, that's the one that's the scariest because it's the most obvious. And remember, the Marines would say, if it's the most obvious, it's probably not going to work. But a lot of times it does. So, but we had this vocational, you know, this emerging theme of culinary skills. And so we went off and we made pizza one afternoon. We started and made the dough, and you know, it was teaching me about how well she learned measuring. She couldn't tell you what 8 ounces of flour looked like, but she could mimic exactly what I did with a you know a measuring cup. And she figured it out right away. You know, we were doing hand over hand. This is where you use your systematic instruction. You know, we're using a variety of different prompts, whether it's hand over hand or modeling prompts. Again, not talking because I don't talk usually when I'm training people. But we got done, ate the pizza and all that kind of stuff. And that vocational theme just kind of disappeared. It turns out she was really tired of what her mom was cooking her every night, which was mostly microwave burritos, and she wanted something else. And she ended up working in an automobile wrecking yard. You know, but we had to go through that to get there. You know, we learned about her skills. We learned, you know, all of this other stuff about her ability to eyeball things and go, oh, I can take that apart and put it back together. And it was sort of this as we deconstructed pizza, those same things came through. And so, you know, it made us explore. We didn't just throw the theme out. We played some other games with it, but it was pretty much, you know, it was pretty much, we went back to the mechanical stuff, and more specifically around automobiles. So, you know, I'm not sure whether we ended up with a transportation theme on that one or not, because it's been a few years ago. But again, be ready to give up the things that look obvious to you sometimes, but test the idea.
Excellent.
Awesome.
So the one thing I want to just hit real quick is that what we're running into with some state projects and some people at the end of discovery, there's a choice to use a customized job development strategy, or as Carrie would say, job finding. And we had couple different scenarios where Voc Rehab in a state had somebody with really complex barriers to employment, and they sent the work out. And this is somebody who'd been through some training and mentoring. And I got the call, said, I didn't train the person, by the way, but the person was looking for a job on Indeed. And we were pretty sure that strategy wasn't going to work, right? So if you need discovery, the assumption is you're going to need a customized job development strategy, and you're not going to get a job looking for jobs online, right? So the other thing I want to talk about real quick is, you know, we talk about the list of 20 and being vigorous. I've just been through this experience. My youngest son, you know, just got waitlisted for Juilliard for graduate school, and he's going to school at Rice University. He's going to be in Virginia this summer, and the blood, sweat, and tears we put into his career have been unreal, right? So I've been kind of yelling at people lately. Why would Joe or Susie's career path be any lesser important than Hayden's, right? So why are we always cutting corners and looking for efficiency and same old, same old? So, you know, when we talk about, this is Carrie's PhD word, took me forever, but this idea of divining, testing out vocational themes, so, right? And so, and Bob has been yelling us lately, you know, people think discovery is a home visit or this or that. And this idea is that we have like maybe an emergent theme and we need to go test for it. So we're going to go get our hands dirty, right? We need to pay attention to the level of competence, the best way to teach somebody, how they process information. We want to try new and related tasks. And especially when we find this kind of skill somebody has, where the heck do people get paid to do this kind of thing, right? Russell, go ahead. So during COVID, this got a little trickier, right? And I've had the good fortune to do a lot of work with Erica Kishbaugh, Keystone Human Services in Pennsylvania, and they just have a great team. and they're really, really committed to fidelity. So, and I think we did a pretty good job with Bridget. So I just want to go through real quick and tell you Bridget's story about how we kind of divined her themes and where we're at right now. And the other thing about what happened, at least to me during COVID, when everything was locked down, well, what am I going to do? All the small businesses are locked down, but then we started looking at the world in a bigger place. So I was doing a training for Full Life Ahead in Alabama and online for a parent group. And I already knew a little bit about Bridget, and she was interested in baking, right? And if people that know me, I tried to cook pasta the other day, but I burned the water. So I'm not your resource on cooking, right? So Tracy's this wonderful mother from Alabama who's a 5-star chef. And I said, Tracy, might we do a Zoom call and you could give us some advice on baking? So in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, there was Crystal, the employment specialist, and Bridget, and I'm recording, and Tracy's giving us all this great advice. And it's kind of, everybody's excited. Russell, go ahead. So at the end of the call, Tracy just decides to basically adopt Bridget. She said, okay, I'm going to send you some pans and some vanilla and this and that. She's now sent her 3 care packages. Like, she's just like, and she's always there to help us, right? She's all, you see that, that's not even a complete list of all the things she sent her. So, and keep moving, Russell. So then, this was with the lockdown, group home and not lockdown. They decided they were going to make some peanut butter cookies, and they made a couple of batches in the group home, and then they couldn't get in the group home. Then they went to the administrative office, but they were really resourceful, right? And she made some pretty good cookies but we weren't sure how well received they'd be. So we asked her, she liked the cookies. We asked her to go and give out samples to the neighbors. The neighbors liked them. I made her, just because it was uncomfortable for them, I said, I want to buy some cookies. I want you to make me a big batch. I want to mail them to me, and I want an invoice. And they're all weirded out. No, we can't charge you. I was like, well, no, this is to make you work and make you learn a little bit. So they sent me cookies. I paid them $35 for everything. But again, I think we expanded the skills. And then for the next thing, it's always like, what's the next, don't get stuck. So the next thing they did, they started making muffins, and Bridget was pretty good at making muffins. But I made the assumption that we've got to see some higher level skills, right? And I'm obsessed with cream-filled cupcakes. I just think those are so cool. And I honestly didn't know how you make them, Carrie. I thought you'd like injected them or something, right? So, Christine Hermansky is a local friend who's a phenomenal baker. So got a hold of Christine. I said, could we do a baking lesson? So I went over there with my phone and my laptop, and they did a 3-hour baking lesson for Christine did for Bridget, and she killed it, right? And they bonded. And again, Christine said, I'll do anything for her. And then the other thing, John is the assistant to Erica, and he's on the church council, and he's connecting with everybody. Then we did an informational interview at specialty bakeries, and she's currently doing an internship with this place called Delicia. So if the people that know me, I'm always ranting about doing a community action team, right? So Bridget now has a community action team made up people from 3 states. So Bridget's the woman on the left who taught her how to make the cream-filled cupcakes. Tracy's the mentor, coach, and everything, and sells her stuff. And then Sean is the guy on the right who's a world-class employment specialist human being from Maryland, but he's also a 5-star baker. So we got online a couple Mondays ago, and Sean taught her how to make bread. I hope we still have the bread picture here. Nope. So this is just a picture of her making the cupcakes, right? She did really well with support. And then she made bread a couple weeks ago, and the bread was really good. So we think that we're getting somewhere, right? We think that she's got some skills, and we might be able to do something with culinary and with baking, and we're pretty close with that. So, but with the other themes, right, we want to test all 3 themes. We don't just go down one rabbit hole. So Erica is so resourceful. They went over to Erica's house for a couple afternoons and she groomed both of her dogs. And we've got videotape that, to end the world. And she did pretty well, like, right, on grooming dogs. I mean, that she was good at it, something else she excelled at. But we all know there aren't enough jobs for everybody in the world who has a puppy, right? Or, right, in the city of Atlanta, there are 750 pooper scooper businesses, for God's sake, right? Yeah, go ahead, Russell. So continuing with the animal theme, they got hooked up with a dog shelter. And they said, well, what we could really use, is somebody to make these snuffle boards. And these are things that dogs chew on. And she did really well with that, right? And her third theme is customer service. So they found she helps out. She lives in a group home. She functions as a junior staff. She's got that helpfulness disease that some of us have. And we had her do some serving. We had her do some food preparation. And again, she excelled, right? So at this point, in my opinion, we're looking at her customer service, her baking and her customer service themes seem to be the strongest. And I'm hoping that, with the animal thing, that she'll make some money and be able to buy her own dog. But next one, Russell, go ahead. That I think, the idea is where we can't cut corners, right? If you cut corners, you're cheating the process. So, that for me, I just wanted to show you an example of divining vocational themes, that we really went out and we were rigorous and we worked the process. And I think this is what we need to do versus, let's go look for a job with puppies. And I know somebody was going to ask, so we tracked it, and with the amount of time that went into setting all this stuff up for all of us involved, that took 48 hours of discovery. That was my, connecting, that was the employment specialist, that was with everybody involved. That took 48 hours. So Russell, go ahead from there. That was my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, Carrie. Everybody go have a White Russian this weekend if you drink. If you don't worry about it. I did not want to give out everybody's emails because I was worried, I didn't look like 250 people showed up, but I did want to, I have some time, I have a 3:30 so I can hang out. But I started a Gmail account, just a GHA Community Conversations. And I'd love to just hear, especially, I know like Kathy, I see it, like some of you I'm working with directly right now, but others maybe familiar, less familiar. The themes are a concept I think it takes people a while to get comfortable with and to understand. So I just would love, if people have the time and have the inclination to send an email about what you think or other things around themes or any other thing regarding customized employment, that you'd like to see us talk about, just your perspective.
Well, and can I make a comment?
Yeah.
On the last one too. Again, this is where your team comes in, and this is where refinement comes in. I wouldn't call that like a customer service theme. I think that's a job description, quite frankly. I would look at that as an advocacy theme, that this is somebody who's interested in how people are doing and how can I make their lives better. And that, again, if we look at customer service, what does that mean in different places? Does that mean, that I'm the person who sends you a survey after you ate at our restaurant? Or is that the concierge at a hotel? Or is that your defense attorney in a murder case because you offed some guy who pissed you off? All of those people do customer service to some degree, right?
Right.
And so I would make that bigger. I would make that advocacy. And then I'd ask the question, who else does advocacy in my community? Well, ask your local, police force what they do. Well, they do customer service. Your fire department does customer service. Every one of us at Griffin-Hammis Associates does customer service. So again, that's broad, but now you can boil that down using the other themes, maybe as part of your refinement. So I hope that helps. I hope, again, it is kind of an amorphous concept until you get going with it. And there's always, I know I've mislabeled themes before trying to figure out what the hell they were. So, that's part of the process.
Cool.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So and I think that's part of, one of the things I love, in terms of the story. There was a guy, I'm forgetting, Daniel Kahneman, but he talks about that a story is about significant events and memorable moments. Just so I think getting towards, to me, like you're saying, like I think and I don't know if this is what you're saying, but what's unique, but what is it that you're learning about the person, that is kind of, that represents or that reflects, I think, significant things or memorable moments. And again, what I struggle with oftentimes when thinking of themes is just sometimes, again, the limited experiences people have had, and how to not get in. I think of it as like kind of theme ruts, that sometimes we're in where we, again, like I can probably say that, again, this is not a criticism of it, but you're going to get organization and cleanliness, in a lot of the themes. And so it makes me start to think about, or, whether it's customer service or about, well, wait a second, is this something that is about the person, or is it somehow, you know what I mean? Are we getting cliched about it, or are we somehow falling into stereotypes? And I think that's something that I think to help people work through. And like you said, I think a lot of times, the themes aren't, especially when you're I said it wrong, divining, or I don't know what I said the first time, but
Russell, people are asking
sorry.
about email addresses. I think you took them out.
I took them out because I felt bad for the dude. I did not want him to get overwhelmed. So if you can find Corey and me, you can find us, or I can call me, or you can find ours easily. The dude is not available.
Email addresses in the chat real quick.
The dude is not available. But if you have any,
if you can't find me, then you shouldn't.
Yeah, right.
How's that?
You're probably not a good discovery practitioner if you can't find his email. Yeah. But that is the other. You remind me. That's another metaphor I've been using is discovery in customized job. All of it is kind of detective work, or like you're getting clues and you're trying to make sense of them. Like the Columbo thing, which I think that applies to job development too, or you could view it as like you're a anthropologist. You're just trying to understand, what is this, and like you said, when you see those contradictions, that's almost my favorite part of this whole process is like, we learn this.
Oh, I got to tell you something funny.
Oh, sorry. We learn this thing, and then we learn this thing, and they don't go together at all. Like, what is that, right? Like, what's that point to? Because you're getting, I think, you're getting a lot more potential directions, right? And I think that in general, that's the problem, is that we don't have a lot of ideas. We don't have a lot of options typically. So, and again, to go back to Dave, I remember him sitting me down and saying, like, I can just picture his hand, like he's like, our job, his hand up, is to help people get more choices, and then they choose the choices, and you go through each finger, this choice and that choice, but most times people don't, exist with very few of those, and so to me, that's the themes in a nutshell.
Speaking of conversation, I wonder if anybody else has any thoughts they want to like open their mic and chat a little bit.
Yeah, I have some time.
Hi, it's Maureen.
Hi, Maureen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, I just want to thank the three of you, because listening to you all is, again, always inspiring, like it is every time we spend time together. But I wanted to just comment on something that Russell said that for me was like an aha moment in the development of the theme. And a lot of times, as I'm reviewing discovery staging records that my staff have done, I'll say, okay, how did you arrive here? How did you get this? And I love that you framed it. Tell me the story about this. in terms of the evolution of this theme, what was the story? And storytelling is so powerful, so I just wanted to comment, and I'm going to be using that from now on. And then I also wanted to thank Corey for providing a COVID relevant example. Seriously, because I know that everyone has been struggling with COVID life and doing boots on ground in the community service, in a Zoom kind of life, and as we're pulling out of it, I think, we've learned a lot, right? But I really thank you so much for sharing that example, because I think it's really relevant for everyone that we support, and my staff that are on this call. So just wanted to share that. And I love you guys. So thank you so much.
We love you
Thanks,
too.
Maureen.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've been trying to build into the staging records, and thanks, Maureen. I've just been doing like a quick, and again, I don't want to make it road to routine. It's just asking people, what did you see during the home visit? What were you told during the home visit and the interviews? What did you, what was done? What did you observe during the discovery activities? Because sometimes those stories they can't be complete, especially when you're getting to know people. But just to somehow tie them together, instead of just a random, and again, you are casting a wide net, I think, at the beginning of discovery, because you're like, every piece of information is valuable, because you don't know the person well enough to figure out what's a false lead and what's not, like Carrie was saying.
Russell,
yeah.
Rachel S. Stewart, just pronouncing it right, said, I recently attended the Microsoft Ability Summit. I'm so excited with the accessibility technology practices are finally getting some more attention. We need to probably do a conversation on that. Rachel, I'd love to hear about that. That's just something else that we could all benefit from learning for each other. That would be great sometime to get in deeper into that.
Hi, this is Rachel. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Yes, I was just curious if anybody had attended it. Certainly, I have access to those presentations, the transcript, and I doubt that it's not, I'm sure that it's publicly available through Microsoft in some way, but if folks are interested, I'd really love to, just brainstorm and talk about what they've provided, what they've developed, and what they've made accessible to a lot more people and more companies who are into the diversity and inclusion aspect of developing the workforce.
Great, Rachel. I'd love to hear about that sometime. Want to connect? That'd be great.
Awesome. How should I just contact you, Corey?
Yeah, just email me. That'd be great.
Your email. Okay, thanks.
Cool. I can't tell how many people are still on. Does anybody?
67.
Okay, cool.
I was thinking back in the day, Maureen, it was you and I, Debbie Gilmer, Ashley, and we'd always people get stuck on the discovery activities, right? And that's what we've been trying to move people toward. And some of this stuff we've done stuff, and I was at Zoom calls and weird technology, and like Carrie will say, you go find a master craftsman who teaches you something. Well, we found a whole bunch of master craftsmen. You talk about doing a Zoom call, and they hold up their flip phone. They say, can I do a Zoom call on my flip phone? So we've had to accommodate, right? We send somebody over there with a hotspot and a laptop. But I think the artisans and the master craftsmen have been more accessible during COVID than they were during normal times, because they've actually got time to hold still. But, those of us who've been struggling with figuring out, the task-based activities, that's just one of the things we really want to hit today about, getting beyond the assumption of the emergent and in divining and testing out, the ideas.
Right on.
Hey, you guys, this is just a follow-up to this. On June 4th, we're going to be doing another community conversation about the informational interview. And I think it's a really good bridge, right? Because a lot of the stuff you were talking about in terms of, getting a little bit more complex and the contradictions of, in people, those sorts of things are going to happen when people meet with businesses. So just so they can check out on the GHA website about registering for that, and June 4th at 1:00 Eastern time.
Awesome. Yeah, and the themes are what lead you to the businesses, right? So
Exactly.
nice. That's the next step. Cool. Great. Well, Carrie, sorry.
Quick question about
Yeah.
the availability of this recording for later, because I missed, I had another meeting previous to this. So I missed about 30 minutes of them.
Okay. Yeah, we'll probably, Dallas, it's recorded and we have the names of everybody registered. So we'll probably, I can't speak with certainty, but we'll probably put it somewhere and send it out.
Thank you.
If that's okay.
Dallas, where are you going to put it?
I just put the link in the chat. I'll be able to lead it up later this afternoon, but it's griffinhammis.com/webinar-recordings.
Oh, right. They're up there. They're going on our website. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Super.
You look great, Carrie.
What else can you say?
You growing the hair out long? How long is that going to go?
I wasn't
Ponytail?
meaning to. I wasn't
No.
meaning to. My barber was supposed to shave me yesterday, but she got
Oh, yeah?
in a little bit of a problem. So
Oh no. Bob, do you have a ponytail? I've been seeing you on Facebook.
wearing a fishing vest for some reason. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Is that a retirement thing, Bob?
Yeah, well, it's about having a lot of pockets. Got a lot of stuff. And I got a guitar pick in here, and my
So you're a
COVID,
hoarder.
my vaccine thing, in there, and but
So I'm thinking you're
I don't have,
one of
I don't
your-
have a ponytail, but I have long hair.
Okay.
I'm thinking one of your vocational themes is hoarding.
Yeah, there you go again with the vocational themes for me.
But before this turns into a Griffin-Hammis Friday afternoon happy hour,
There you
thanks
go.
for sitting in. There's
Thanks,
54
everybody.
people. If you have any insights, you open up your mic, let us have it, email us, put them in the chat box. Don't be shy.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. See y'all later.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks, Gina.
Thanks,
Thanks to you. That was fun.
Thank you.